The fourth group I think is critically important. It's having a personal advisory board. And these are people who've known you for 20 years, so knew you when you were young, right? And know who you really are. And they only care about you. Their vested interest is in your success. And I use that group when I'm making life changes.
Welcome back to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. This is the show where we dive into the minds of high-performing entrepreneurs, innovators, and world-class leaders. If you're someone who's always looking to grow, push limits, think and do bigger, you're in the right place. Today we have with us Randy Wootton. Randy is the CEO of Maxio, a company helping high-growth SaaS businesses get their billing metrics and financial ops in order so they can scale with confidence. He's also held major leadership roles at Salesforce, Microsoft, served as a CEO of Rocket Fuel, Percolate. Let's welcome Randy to our show.
Thanks so much for having me. Delighted to be here and excited for the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. So you're not a CEO of Maxio anymore, correct?
So we just did a transition. I'd been there for about 3 years. Helping Maxio was the mashup of two companies, SaaS Optics and Chargify, who'd been around for a while, primarily focused on the B2B SaaS space and doing, as you mentioned, helping to support billing, invoicing, RevRec, and reporting. And so my remit over the last 3 years has been to integrate those two companies, bring them together, create Maxio as a brand, as an experience, and broaden its platform. And now I've handed off the baton to another CEO who's going to continue that and continue moving forward. So yeah, so it was a 3-year tour of duty. That's what I do. I've been a CEO 3 times. I'm one of those people that's like a professional CEO that comes in and helps either do a strategy pivot or a transformation, or in this case, drive the integration of two companies. So it was a great learning experience, had a lot of fun, and excited for Maxio's continued success.
That's great. So before we get into this, I have a question for the audience, especially on YouTube. Okay, if you can share one lesson you have learned from a leader who truly inspired you, I would love to hear that. Please drop it in the comments. And I'm sure Randy would as well. And anyone else that's watching would love to hear from you as well. So thank you so much. Back to finding out about this journey of yours, Randy, and how we can amplify someone's life today. You've been in the Navy, right? Then you actually went into Silicon Valley. How do you think being trained in those kind of positions helped you make proper decision-making skills in business?
Yeah, I think the military was a great training environment. And I think what I tell people is in the military, one of the old adages is lead, follow, or get out of the way. What that means is you're often, when you start in the military, you're learning how to be a follower. And it's not a blind follower. Like, you're not going to do things that are illegal, but you are going to learn how to take orders and execute. And your ability to respond quickly and get things done is critically important. And then you become a leader. And then you've learned, you have empathy with what it means to be a follower, and then you become a leader. And then you are trying to be smart about the decisions you're making, but you expect when a decision is being made that people will go execute. And so I think there's this just real clarity there. And what we don't have time for in the military is in wartime, is a lot of debate. And so you want to do the hard work ahead of time, do the plans, there's a very thoughtful planning exercise. But then when you're flying over I was an aviator, bombardier, navigator, and A6 intruders. When you're flying over the country, you have to be reacting to what's unfolding. I think the other thing in the military, they put an enormous premium on training. So when I graduated the Naval Academy, it took me 3 years to get through flight school, to get through the training with the A6 intruder, to go out and do carrier landings. And so this commitment to developing skills over time and learning how to do the job so that when you're faced in those life and death situations, like, you can make the instantaneous decision. But it's not just a gut move. It's a move that has been trained and refined based on all the experience you've had up to that point. And so I think as you extrapolate it into the corporate sector, I would say the biggest lesson learned for me was it was lead, follower, let's talk about it. And I remember being at Microsoft, I was like, why are we wasting all this time talking about it? Is it your decision? Is it my decision? I don't care. Like, you make the decision. But I do think that in corporate sector writ large, one of the things people feel like, oh, it's all consensus based and everyone needs to agree. And I disagree with that. I think that what you want to get clear on is, what is the decision we're trying to make? Who ultimately is going to be responsible for the decision? And how are we going to make this decision? Is it going to be input? Like, we're going to sit around and have a good productive conversation for an hour. We're going to share data. We're going to share assumptions. And then at the end of the day, we're going to hand it off to someone to then make a decision and go execute. What I find is that in many companies is you'll be in a meeting and you'll think a decision is made, and then you come outside of the meeting and the people are having the meeting outside of the meeting. And you're like, no, let's be efficient.
It's
Like,
done.
so I think that's the being clear about the decision rights, right? Who has the D, who's going to make the, and I also think there's this sense in the corporate sector. I've met a lot of people who are willing to, who are feel like they have the veto and will say no, but when you ask them to step up and take it, they won't, because they're also afraid of being accountable. And I think in the military, that's one of the things you really learn is, like, you're going to fail, but because you have this practice again and again of what we need is people to step up and say, I got it. I'm going to make it happen the best of my ability. And if it doesn't work, all right, I'm going to come back. We're going to debrief and we're going to go off and do it again. And I think in the corporate sector, there's a lot of fear of failure. And maybe my career is not going to advance if I take on this big assignment. But they'll sit on the sidelines and tell you all the reasons why something isn't going to work. So I think that you need this level of people engaged in the mission, right? People committed to the mission, people willing to step up and then bring real clarity about decision making.
Ever have one of those days where you're checking all the boxes, but still feel like you're missing something? I should think I just needed to work harder. Turns out it was my old story about myself that was keeping me stuck. I put together a free training on how to actually shift that internal stuff so you can show up differently. If this hits, link is below in the description. Yeah. Fear, not just in that environment, but fear in general, even in business, is a big aspect to what an individual can achieve. I remember being afraid of what other people thought of me or what my family thought of me. I was just trying to be somebody that others wanted. And there was always that fear I wouldn't take that step. There's so many things I'm doing now. The previous version of me would be shocked utterly that I'm doing it, but we shift and we change. And the real game changer for an individual is when we start getting out of our comfort zone and facing the fear. Fear is going to be there. Just build a relationship with the fear. And that's what I feel makes that phenomenal leader. You mentioned about how you want to be a good follower to become a great leader is that empathy, just understanding things as a follower that gives you the skills to perform as a leader.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's that expression, feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah.
I think being a CEO or being a founder, I've never been that early stage entrepreneur only by myself. I've always come into a situation, a company that is backed by VC, PE. I was CEO of a public company. My first actual gig as CEO was a public company CEO gig. And what I would describe it as is fear. It was also imposter syndrome. I'm not the guy for this job. And so I tell people, the people that I coach, that there's 4 things you want to have. One, you want to have a mentor. So a mentor is someone who has been in your specific role at stage and at the right context. So when I was public company CEO doing a turnaround, we hired a guy named Tony Zingale. He'd done several public company gigs. He'd done several turns around. And so he had very specific, contextually relevant experience for me to learn from. Number 2 is you want to hire a coach. A coach, is, in my opinion, is different than a mentor. A coach helps you with your interpersonal effectiveness. So when I stepped into that role as public company CEO, I had a board of directors who were very seasoned executives. And I felt like I was playing minor league ball walking into the New York Yankees, and like I didn't know what to do. And so the coach really helped me develop my skills as a leader of a boardroom with very senior executives and how to how to work with them, how to create alignment, how do you get all these different parties aligned, interpersonal effectiveness with the board, with your leadership team, with how you're showing up with your organization. Number three, I think it's really valuable to have a peer group. And so there are several organizations out there for early stage founders. There's one called EO, I think it's Entrepreneurs Organization. There's one called YPO, Young Presidents Organization.
Mhm.
I have been part of a group called Vistage, which is for people that are a little bit further along in the business cycle. There are other ones out, Venwise, but you can find a group of founders, entrepreneurs, and it's a cohort. And you get together on a monthly or quarterly basis, and you just come together and kvetch a little bit and talk about problems, and you get feedback on it. So you have that third group of peers. You got a mentor, a coach, a peer group. The fourth group, I think, is critically important. It's having a personal advisory board. And these are people who've known you for 20 years, so knew you when you were young, right? And know who you really are. And they only care about you. Their vested interest is in your success. And I use that group when I'm making life changes. So when I've changed jobs, I call these people and we get together. We used to get together during COVID like once a month. Now it's periodically, but we always get together once a year for a ski trip. And it just, you feel the love of these people and the support no matter what. And so now I'm facing this next transition and I'm trying to figure out, am I going to retire? Am I going to go dig in on another entrepreneurial effort? Am I going to go be an operating partner? Am I going to be a CEO coach? Like having an opportunity to talk with my peer advisory group really, and we're just starting this, right? But they're going to help me parse out like the themes of my life and the things that where I've had resonance and areas where I've had dissonance. And I think they're going to be very good counselors for me as I think about what it is in this next chapter. So I think the fear part that you mentioned is in large often because you feel alone. And so
Mm.
how do you create connections, deliberate and intentional, with people who are going to, and everyone I've ever asked is always welcomed it. Sometimes you have to pay for them. You got to pay for the mentor or the coach but in general, like people are willing to meet you if you're willing to open up and be vulnerable.
Yeah, investing in mentors has changed my life. So I am in 100% agreement on that. And the guests on the show, you will notice they naturally wanting to share what they know. They create a program or they do something to align it with a mentorship or coaching for others because they just naturally want to give back. I feel like there's this aspect of a human being that we just want to serve other human beings really badly.
I agree. I don't know if every human being is oriented in that way. We can just look at our current situation of broader political environment in terms
Yeah.
of, but I think a lot of people in the military come from an orientation of wanting to serve. Your starting point is you
Mm.
want to serve your country. I think so. That's just in my innate self is to give in a productive way. I think the other thing is I'm very grateful for those that invested in me. And so
Mm.
my career, I would not be where I am today without the mentors that have
Agree.
impacted the career shifts. And so I feel, not paying it forward, but almost paying it back.
Yeah.
I personally, part of my career at the Navy, I went back, I took a master's in the great books, and I went and taught literature for 3 years. And so I have continued on in seminars and other ways. So I guess there are two elements to that. One is I'm a lifelong learner. And so I think people that have that orientation that are humble enough to realize they don't really know it all and are just seekers of truth are going to be doing that through reading. They're going to be taking courses. They're going to be meeting with people. And I think that orientation is I also want to be sharing ideas and working with people. And it's my greatest sense of accomplishment. The thing that makes me most proud is when I look back over the career I've had 25 years in the corporate sector and people that were working for me in my organizations have now continued on in their career. And they'll reach out and say, "Hey, Randy, you made an impact on me on this way," or "I remember
I
this." And
love
I don't even
those.
remember it.
Yeah.
But when you've been able to, what other legacy would you want? It's not about
It's
money.
priceless.
It's the people you've impacted. It's the relationships you built.
Yeah.
And I tell people, well, software is a people business. It's people that are building
Yeah.
code. It's people that are selling the code. It's people that are taking care of the customers. That's a relationship business.
Yeah.
And so if you're not interested in authentic relationships, people are going to suss that out. And they're going to see
Yeah.
that you're solving
Yeah.
for power, you're solving for
Yeah.
dollars. But we're in a world where we're interconnected as a species. And
Yes. We are.
hopefully there'll be
Yeah.
peace and that we will
Yeah.
work broadly to build more connections, but I do think that comes from an orientation to want to serve.
Yeah, if you go deep enough in the rabbit hole, you will see that everything is one, fundamentally speaking. So I definitely agree with that. It was great to have you doing what you're doing right now, because people that are actually serious, people that actually say, you know what, I need help, that's who you're serving, really. But we all need it. We all need that helping hand. And I feel like the people that connect with individuals as a mentor or a coach, there is this intuitive connection that happens for them to invest in someone when it comes to that. They just feel that this individual can help me in a way that is right for me. Because let's face it, nowadays it is really noisy online. Almost everyone is a mentor or coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that goes back to that point of be clear about what you're looking for. Are you looking
Yeah.
for help? For example, you're an early stage company, less than $1 million, and you're trying to raise your first seed round. I'm probably not the right guy for you because I've never
Yeah.
raised seed capital. But there are
Mm.
people out there who have and who can provide that. So I think you want to be, it's like picking your instructor at college.
Yeah.
The course that you take is primarily the impact it's going to have on you is primarily dictated, I think, by the professor and the instructor more so than even the text. Like, I think there are people who can get through a text on their own, but really it's the professor or the tutor that helps unlock the mysteries of whatever text you're looking at. And so I think finding people with the appropriate experiences and background for what you're trying to solve. And that's why I break those things into 3 different groups. Like the coach, the
Yeah.
person who was helping me better understand who I was as a person and how better to interact with these other board members, wasn't the person I was talking to about how to do OpEx optimization. And the people that I'm talking to in the advisory group, the peer group, they may not have SaaS specific experience, and we're in that $50 to $100 million zone in terms of revenue, but they may have relevant experience in terms of hiring your next head of engineering. And so it's who do you go to for what questions, and what's their realm of expertise?
But even in those brackets of skills that you're looking for, within that category, there will be multiple people. They'll have, it's just how you feel with the individual.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that meeting with these people to talk to them about your situation and feeling them out in a way is very important. Just like when you bring on a staff member, you want to interview a whole bunch of people before you make a decision. Same way, I feel like when you need the help, when you go and meet with these different coaches and mentors and see where you intuitively feel. Because every time I made a decision based on that, it was successful. When I based it on other more cosmetic reasons, it wasn't great. But for me, having those options, interviewing, seeing where you connect energetically is super important, I think.
Yeah, no, mind, body, spirit, right? Like the person can be wicked smart, but if you don't have a connection at the heart level or energetic level, then it probably
It's
won't
good what
work.
you're doing.
Yeah,
And
I'll give you 2
what you're
examples.
doing
So
is great.
Yeah.
On podcast, right?
Yeah. So I've got 2 examples. I've gotten into nutrition, and I'm trying to figure out how to better adjust my macronutrients and which supplements I should be taking. And I had this experience with 2 different nutritionists. One who was a hard ass, and I'd log my stuff, and it was a woman, and she would just beat me up about why I wasn't doing everything I should be doing. And it was really tough. And I felt like I was back at football camp and getting beaten up on. And then I had this other nutritionist who just had a different approach to it. And the energy, to your point, was more around, hey, this is a journey. Yeah, you're going to get some of this stuff. Let's celebrate the things that you're doing, and here's some things to think about. And it worked for me. Now, the first nutritionist has a lot of successful clients. They have been very successful in their way. But to your point, that modality wasn't working for me at where I am in my
not
career.
for you.
So
for now, not for your soul.
Not for my soul. And so I do think all of these mentors is, how do you find someone that you resonate with?
Yeah, it's important. Can you share what your game plan usually is when you enter a company?
Sure.
For example, your first 90-day plan?
Yep. So I am a huge fan of the book, First 90 Days. Every time I start a new gig, I read it. And this is not
Oh,
just
it's
like
funny
the
that I said 90 days.
yeah. Oh, it's a great book. And I used it before I was in the CEO role. So I think I first read it, I don't know, back in the 90s. And what it does is it just helps you get your head around a couple of things. One is when you're interviewing for a job, you are already like in the role. And so you need to be ready to go in terms of what are the set of things you're looking at? What are the questions you're asking? Who are the conversations you want to have before you even start on day one? So your first 90 days doesn't start on day one. It probably starts like 30 days prior as you're ingesting the information. You're trying to do the
Mm,
analysis, the strategic analysis. And obviously you're not going to have
pre-planning.
all the right answers. But I do think what you're trying to do and as you're coming into a role is understand it like the forest versus the trees. Broadly, where is this company based? What are its strengths? What are its opportunities? What's happening in the competitive landscape? What would you have to believe for this to be true to create a lot of enterprise value? Then you're doing a bunch of conversations. In that next, call it first 90 days after you start, I think what you're doing is, I call it the 4L. You look, you listen, you laugh, and you learn. You look, you listen, you laugh, and you learn. And so you're looking to validate the assumptions you've made. You're listening to people. So you're setting up lots of one-on-ones with people in the company, one-on-ones with customers, partners, board members, right? Learn. So you want to be operating from a place of just not that you don't have a point of view, but you want to encourage people to participate and validate. So assumptions and data. Help me understand, is there more data I need to be looking at? Help me understand your assumptions. Let me share my assumptions. Because the worst thing in the world is come in a situation and say, I got all the right answers. No one's going to listen to you. So you've been hired for a specific reason because of your background, skills, and experiences. Your opportunity is to figure out how to, and I can tell you examples where I failed in this, but as you come in, like, what are your initial hypotheses? So a data, assumptions, hypothesis. The laugh part was one thing that I found I've developed over, I don't know, last 10 or 15 years is I tend to be, as you can probably tell, I talk fast, I think fast, I move fast. People can feel like I'm being transactional in my interactions. Like I tell people, I try to build relationships through the work. And what I found was critical is in the first 90 days is just to spend time laughing. And what I mean by that is go have a coffee, go have a lunch, make sure you have enough time where you're doing dinners where there isn't an agenda. My executive team would tell you, the ones that I've had, I'll show up at dinner with books and I'm handing out to people and saying, hey, let's talk about this book today. And they're like, Randy, why don't you just chill out and talk about kids? And what did you do on the weekend?
Yeah.
And it's super hard for me to do that because I'm so excited about the work.
Yeah.
But that laughing component where you're being very real and laughter brings people together, it's joy. And so you're being joyful at a time where a lot of people are probably anxious that there's a new CEO starting and is their job secure? What's happening with the company? So that 4L tour over the first 30 days is wicked important. And
Mhm.
you can get consumed with a bunch of little stuff that seems like it's critically important. But if you're not making the time to get to know the people, to try to understand the core issues, then as you move into the next 30 days, so day 30 to 60, now you got to tee up a couple of things. You got to tee up some quick wins. You got to, in my opinion, you got to find the things where you can make a decision where people may have not made a decision in the past and they are waiting to see if you're going to do it. And one example, I was at a company and they had an HR leader and she was fine, nice person, but everyone thought that she wasn't effective. And I showed up and in the first 30 days, I was like, God, I need all this help and it's not happening. This person is not delivering. And so in 30 days, I said, look, this isn't going to work. We need to move on. And so I had a bunch of HR professionals in my background that I've worked with, have been superstars. If you're trying to come into a company and lead transformation, it is a culture change, and you need an HR partner that can do that. And so I let the person go, and all the executive team was like, "Wow, we didn't think you would do that." And I was like, well, "Why not?" And they're like, "Blah blah blah." And I was like, "Look, like if it seemed like you were telling me this wasn't working and no one was
Mm.
solving this problem, I will make that decision." Right? And I had
Mm.
enough data points over the first 30 days to say, yeah, this isn't working for me. If it's not working for them, if it was working for them, then I would probably take another 30 days and say, maybe I need to tune my radar a little bit more here because it's working for these people, but I don't, something's dissonant for me. So Anyways, I think you make those quick decisions, quick wins, initiate some programs, do something good in that day 30 to 60, and start to build out a roadmap for the set of changes you want to initiate, the set of programs you want to put in place, the types of things you're thinking broadly on strategy. And so by the end of 90 days, you've met the people, you've learned a bunch, you've got some quick wins, and now you can take a breath.
Oh, it's excellent. Thank you so much for outlining that whole game plan. And the relationship is a crucial part of it. And sometimes as professionals, or when we're infused with what we know and how we can help people, we get really passionate as human beings. And I can relate to that when I work with individuals for the internal mindset transformations. I get really enthusiastic about this whole idea and what can happen in their life. So automatically, I just want to do, like you mentioned, bringing
Yeah.
the books, right?
Yeah.
And I lose that part. But overall, I'm really good at the relationship side of things, just having fun, the laughter part. But when it comes to that, something shifts in me. I'm just there focused. But the funny thing is, I should have more of that in there as well.
Yeah.
That relationship, it should continue. The laughter should continue, incorporate in it. But to your point, it's sometimes automatic. It's just automatic because of that level of passion you have.
Yeah, I'll give you one lesson learned from Maxio was everyone's probably familiar with Myers-Briggs or Intact or Insights or DISCs or all these personality tests you can take. And I think they're wonderful to use at companies. I describe them as a year's worth of one-on-ones. If you take a personality test, the ones I use mostly is called Insights profiles. I have a specific insight profile. You have a different insight profile. Your ability to use those, and now you can load them up into Chat GPT, and I can load your profile, I can load my profile and say, hey, I want to talk about subject X. Help me better frame this, knowing our two different profiles. So that's a total recommendation for people. If you really want to get to know them, is use those person you now had prior, and you would have everybody's team on the wheel, and you'd see how they resonated. They were either more creative, they were more like driven, they were more detail oriented, or they're more relationship oriented. Those are the four buckets. My team was very relationship oriented. And so when me coming in as super hard driving, it felt intimidating and transactional. And so we had something called a round of good. At the beginning of our executive team meetings, for the first 15 minutes, it was not about business. It was about, hey, what happened in your life over the weekend? And what do you want? What good thing happened in your life? And I'm sitting here like biting my fingers because all I want to do is get into the business. And instead we're talking about kids and dogs and vacation.
I can see that.
Oh my God. However, having said that, being in a hybrid work environment, giving a little opportunity for us to laugh, to build the relationship, build stronger bonds and trust with that team. So that then when we started to get into the harder conversations around the business, we are operating from a place of where we've already leaning in to the relationship versus showing up and being on the defense or the offense as you're taking it. Sales guys complaining, marketing complaining about sales. Like you depower the intensity and instead empower the relationship.
Randy, that's great. I know you're talking about that level of go, but you still have this underlying calmness about you. There's this feeling of, yeah, it's going to be fine kind of thing. That's what I'm getting from you. Is that a kind of feedback you get from people?
Yeah, I think so. I think the feedback I get is usually along a couple dimensions. But one thing I would say is, having been in the military, what I tell people is, look, no one's in corporate sector. No one's dying here. This isn't life and death decisions. So like, let's all just ratchet it down
relax.
a bit. Just relax. Number two, I've been working on myself for 20 something years, and I was a whole lot more intense when I was younger. I would make a couple of recommendations. There's just broadly therapy. There's a great organization out there called pathwiseleadership.org, pathwiseleadership.org. And I've been in that program for, 12 or 15 years. I've helped lead cohorts. It's incredibly powerful. And it roots in how do you be present and how do you interact with other people. It's tied in with psychology. And so it's super cool. So that allows you to have some space. But I would say, in meditation, having meditation in your life helps settle everything down.
Do you meditate?
I do. I wax and wane with it. when
Yeah.
things are super intense and I'm not getting a lot of
Yeah.
sleep and I'm traveling, my meditation turns into a nap. But
Yeah.
like this morning, I got up and meditated, and I think it
That's
helps
great.
you be present, be conscious about your
Yes.
body.
Yes.
It helps you create a space, I think, if whatever meditation you're doing, but like gratefulness for what
Mm.
you have in your life. And again, I think
Mhm.
if you're setting the conditions for the day, if you're really
Yeah.
deliberate and
It's
intentional
important.
about it, it
Mhm.
can really, I think it can play forward throughout the day. And now you can
Yeah.
get tossed and turned and beat up by different things and surprises. And if you
Mhm.
can bring yourself back to being present,
And that's
it makes
in
all
a
the difference.
way, yeah, in a way, what meditation does, it trains the mind to be a specific way. For example, you mentioned being present.
Yeah.
And that comes
Yeah.
from the calmness, right? And I
Yeah.
practice meditation a lot. I worked on creating the meditative state habitually. So, meaning in each moment, and I started allowing content to come in that present moment. So, working on things, action taking from that
Yeah.
place of
Yeah.
presence. And then I started getting better at that. Then I started incorporating it more and more into day to day life.
Yeah.
And then slowly it starts becoming you. You start becoming that spaciousness or that stillness.
Yeah.
And it's a game changer because now life is not this trouble thing. Oh my God, what am I going to do? It becomes a joyful thing. Now you're in a flow state where, yes, good and bad is coming, but you understand more because you're more expanded. You're the awareness, the consciousness is more expanded, where you're allowing things to unfold rather than why did this happen to me. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate meeting you. It was great talking to you. Definitely keep in touch. If there's
Yeah.
anything
Sure.
happening in the future, let
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, sure. If people are interested in learning more, so I'm working on a book. It's called The 8 Secrets of Success for SaaS
Mhm.
CEOs. So it's
Mhm.
primarily focused on software as a service. You can find a lot of the chapters on LinkedIn. And then I literally just launched a CEO advisory service called CEOX.io. And so I'm working with a couple of
Nice.
companies right now, but if people are interested in more of this, and trying to figure out if they need a CEO coach and if I'm the right guy. And to your point, with the right energy,
Yeah.
come check me
Yeah.
out, Randy at
Perfect.
CEOX.io.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much, Randy. And yeah, that's a great thing about podcasts because you get the audio side of the energy and the video as well. And depending on the kind of show you go on, but most of them now are both video and
Yeah.
audio,
Yep.
is just being you. You're
Yeah.
just being you and talking. And that there's people searching for help.
Yeah.
And there's so many options, so many news. By you making a decision, going on podcasts is one of the most important things you can do to elevate your career and your network and everything else that comes with it, especially relationships. That's why I
Yeah.
love this, right? Because I get to
Yeah.
meet people and
Yeah.
build
Totally. That's
relationships
what I
all over
loved
the
about my
world.
podcast. It was just the conversation you're
Yeah.
having, the people you're meeting, finding out about their
Yeah.
lives. So thank you
Yeah.
for the opportunity to be here and,
My pleasure.
wish you the best.